Have you ever felt like time is slipping away, like you're running out of time to do the things that you want, to build the career that you want, find the relationship you want, or create the life that you know that you're meant for? Do you feel like healing is taking a long time? We've all felt the pressure of time, the deadlines, aging, the expectations that say things must happen in a certain order. Society teaches us that life unfolds in a straight line. We're born, we go to school, we go to college or university, we get a job, we get married, we work until we retire, and then we die. That's the linear path through time that people live by. Most people operate by the perception that time predictably moves from past to present to future. And if you fall behind, you can't catch up. If you miss an opportunity, it's gone. And if something hasn't happened yet, you assume it's going to take a long time or may never happen at all. But what if everything you believe about time has been filtered through limitation and suppression of the truth? Because time is not a fixed external force that controls us. Time is fluid, time is responsive, and time is shaped by your consciousness. Your past, your present, your future are not separate at all. They exist simultaneously. And you have always had the power to not only bend time, but shift timelines, collapse waiting periods, and change your relationship with time entirely. So in this episode, we're going to talk about time. Because so many people feel like they have no control over time. People feel imprisoned by time. And it's an unconscious fear, but it's a fear that drives a lot of your choices and dictates a lot of your emotions and your beliefs. And when you liberate yourself from the limiting perceptions and commonly held beliefs about time, you free yourself from those self-made prisons where you feel like you're not where you're supposed to be, like you don't have enough time left to do this or that, or this is taking too long. Time is going to become a non-issue. I wanted to do this episode because lately my experiences and reality and time have been liberated from those normalized perceptions and beliefs about what is possible. My personal experiences defy everything we've been conditioned to believe about how time works. And I've had moments where the past has rewritten itself in response to my consciousness and highest timeline. I have experienced the future pulling me forward. I have collapsed alternate realities into a single moment. I have been living in a state where time is not something I am bound by, but something that I am in direct relationship with. And so I no longer fear time or feel powerless in relation to time. I do not fear aging. I do not fear getting things done, quote unquote, on time. There is no such thing as a quote unquote long time for me anymore or a distant future because I have fully understood and embodied that time moves through me. I do not move through time. So in today's episode, I'm going to reveal why you are not trapped. You are not bound by time as you've been conditioned to believe, and why you are not behind, why you are not running out of time, why things are not taking a long time. We're going to completely dismantle the concept of time so that you can be liberated from those concepts and start to experience time as it really is. And start to change your reality in ways that are going to liberate you from feeling stuck and powerless. Welcome to The Simple Source, a paradigm-shifting space where self-love, healing, spirituality, and personal growth are redefined. If you've been told healing takes years, that abundance must be attracted, or that transformation requires struggle, you haven't been told the truth. I'm Linda Valines, a certified trauma-informed holistic coach, author, and spiritual guide. After healing myself from chronic conditions, complex trauma, and lack, not by following traditional frameworks, but by creating my own, I'm now teaching you to love, heal, and free yourself, mind, body, and soul, so you can reclaim your highest health, happiness, and potential with joy and ease. Each week, we go beyond surface-level self-help and into the real mechanics of transformation. If the traditional paths to healing and spirituality haven't produced the changes you want in the life you desire, you're in the right place. You were never meant to struggle or wait for what is already yours. Let's get started with today's episode. So first, let's discuss how time has been commonly perceived in very limiting and disempowering ways that you may not even realize that have been shaping your life. Because time itself is not the issue. The issue is that we have been conditioned to perceive and interact with time in a disempowering way. And that conditioning shows up in how you experience your life. And that's what keeps you trapped in patterns of regret and fear and frustration. So the first commonly held misconception about time is people have a fear that time is running out. Like from the moment we're born, we're taught that time is scarce. We're taught that youth is valuable and that aging is a decline. Like I had to come to terms with this very recently before my whole revelation with time. Everyone is so scared of getting older. We think time is running out, and it's that fear of scarcity. Time is running out. We're conditioned to believe that we only have a limited window to achieve success, to find love, to create something meaningful in our life. And that's why people think I'm too old to start over, or if I don't figure things out soon, it's just going to be too late. There's that underlying fear that time is slipping away, that you're constantly running out of time to do what you came here to do in this life. But that fear is based on a false premise. It assumes that time is external to you, something that moves forward regardless of your choices. But time is not something outside of you. It is a field of intelligence that moves in response to you. It organizes itself around you, and we're going to get into that more later. But another commonly held misconception about time is believing that the past is fixed and defines your future. So most people assume that their past determines their future. And there's a large reason for that, because your conditioning happens in your past. But people get stuck in that belief because they don't think they can change their past. Like people believe if you failed before, then you're inevitably going to fail again because you're a failure. If you've suffered trauma, then you believe that you're permanently shaped by it. If something didn't work out in the past, then you may assume that it's not going to work out in the future because it didn't work out in the past. But here's the truth. The past is not fixed. Your past shifts itself when you shift. There is emerging scientific evidence, actually, especially in quantum mechanics, that suggests that time is not a one-way street. Events that we think of as quote unquote past can actually be influenced by our present and future choices. And I have personally experienced this. And that happens, and most people don't understand that that's what's happening when you heal. So when you heal your past in the present moment, you do by resolving your perceptions and emotional states and your relationship to that event. You do actually heal it in the past. And then that's why your present changes. People don't understand that. That within itself is evidence that the past is not static. Like you can heal your past and then directly influence how your future and your present then unfolds. But I have experienced this, that the past is not static and can rewrite itself in a different way because it has responded to my consciousness. But time is fluid, and we're going to get into all of this later, but time is fluid. Your past does not have to define you. It's not static. It's not rigid. The limitations that you have carried up until today, they don't have to follow you forward. When you release them from your past and from your future. And another common misconception that people have is like living by linear cause and effect. We're conditioned to believe that life unfolds in a step-by-step process. That mentality is everywhere. That there is an order that we have to follow to get from one place to another, to get to B from A. You know, how often have you thought, I need to make more money before I can do the thing that I want to do? Or I have to fully heal before I can be in a healthy relationship. That's cause and effect linear thinking, perception. And that kind of thinking assumes that time is linear, that certain things have to happen before others. But that's not actually how reality works. We live in a non-linear universe. You can collapse steps. Like process is not really a thing unless you believe it's a thing. I mean, process is the noun, not process as the verb. But we've all believed like everything is a process. That was me too, like healing is a process. And I've really tried to be conscious of not saying that anymore. Healing is just healing. And you can access all sorts of outcomes without following that step-by-step, cause and effect, rigid sequence. Your future can actually pull you forward rather than you struggling to move toward your future, okay? Another common experience that people have about time is the anxiety of not being where you should be, quote unquote, should be by a certain time. That's one of the most disempowering beliefs about time, is that we should be further ahead than we are. And society creates these artificial timelines for success, telling us that we should have our careers figured out by the time we're 30, that we need to be financially stable by the time we're 40, and have everything else in place by some arbitrary deadline. And that just leads to that constant feeling of being a failure and constantly comparing. Because if someone else is quote unquote ahead of you, then you assume that then you are behind. And if things take longer than you want or longer than expected, then you assume that something is wrong. But there is no behind, because the past, the present, the future occur simultaneously. And that's not some spiritual woo-woo. It is science. Did you like how I used woo-woo as an adjective and a noun? It's science. You are exactly where you need to be because time is non-linear. And that means ahead and behind are just illusions. And so you're not late. You haven't missed your moment. Time is always available to you when you change your perception and your relationship with it, which is what this episode is about. Those beliefs feel real because we've all been conditioned to see time as something outside of us. But the truth is, time is an illusion of physical reality designed to facilitate the experience of separation and contrast. That's time in 3D, 4D, and to break free from that illusion, you need to understand what time really is. So let's talk about the true nature of time through science, through quantum mechanics, okay? Science time. So time is not a linear construct as it's commonly perceived within the physical realm. It's actually fluid. It's multidimensional. So that what I mean is even in 3D, time is fluid. That's what I mean by that. Time is a multidimensional structure that exists within an infinite field of potentiality. It's both a frequency and a conscious, meaning intelligent field that exists simultaneously as both a framework for your experience, physical reality, and as an illusion that your consciousness can transcend. So to fully understand the nature of time, we have to explore it through quantum physics, quantum biology, multidimensionality, and consciousness itself. You're going to understand why. So firstly, time is a multidimensional construct. That means that time's true essence is not a rigid progression from past to present to future. That's what multidimensional construct means. Time is multidimensional. It's not a forced progression of past to present to future. It's actually a dynamic field where all possibilities coexist simultaneously. Past, present, future exist simultaneously. That's what's known as the concept of block time. It's also called the eternalist view in physics, where again, past, present, and future are equally real and all exist in a singular now. And in higher dimensions, time behaves very differently. So like the 3D perception of time is the experience of linearity, that progression, right? Past, present, future. And that's just a product of the brain filtering information to create continuity. And then you move into the 4D perspective, where time then becomes more fluid. That allows for nonlinear experiences such as deja vu, precognition, retrocausality, meaning when the effect actually influences the cause. And then when you go into 5D and beyond perception, time is just experiences simultaneously, meaning you can shift between timelines at will, integrating higher and multiple realities all at once, because your consciousness dictates your experience of time. But when you operate from purely that 3D perspective, which most humans are because they have forgotten that they're multidimensional beings and infinitely powerful and eternal, when you operate from that purely 3D perspective, time is linear and time is constrictive and feels finite. But from higher states of awareness, when you do remember your multidimensional truth, your highest self, you connect, start to live with, remember, embody your highest truth and self, you can then consciously tell time to behave how you want it to behave. You can shift into different timelines and collapse old ones. You can rewrite aspects of your personal history, meaning your past. And from a quantum mechanics perspective, time is an illusion. It really is, because it actually behaves inconsistently at the micro or subatomic level, meaning superposition is when particles exist in multiple states until observed. So very similarly, timelines are all active potentialities, like in time. That's why it's called a timeline. It's a trajectory of your life. They all exist in active potentialities until your consciousness and your coherence aligns with one. And then that's how you shift timelines. And then there's entanglement, which is when information can be transmitted instantaneously across vast distances, like literally across the universe instantaneously. And that just demonstrates that time is not a necessary medium for causality, meaning time is not a requirement to generate an effect or an outcome. And then there are delayed choice experiments that show that decisions made in the present can retroactively change the past, which is what I said earlier. So all of that, like from a scientific perspective, means that time is not a rigid structure. Time as you perceive it through 3D is just your perception of it, and 3D is just one perception of it and its true multidimensional nature. And so as you can see, science has really been telling us all along that time is nonlinear, that time is fluid, that time doesn't actually have constraints. It's just that classical physics, Newtonian physics, has overshadowed quantum physics in mainstream academia until now. And so the truth is, from a scientific perspective, time emerges as a perception within your consciousness. Rather, it's not an independent force because it only exists because of your consciousness. Time does not exist without you. And in higher dimensions, time is like not a thing. It's just, there's no such thing as past, present, or future. It's just the now. It's simply the present moment. So now that we've established some sciencey stuff about time and how it really works and why you don't need to feel fear or feel constrained by it, I want to share some of my personal experiences to provide some real life proof that time is not what we've been taught. Because I think this is as important as the sciencey stuff. And I fully invite you to do the deep dive into quantum mechanics and investigate, the actual true nature of time, because it's not what you think it is. And it's time, to question all of the influences in your life that enforce struggle and you feeling small, you feeling powerless, you feeling like you can't experience the life that you want to experience. And so I hope that in sharing my experiences, I illuminate that what I've just said is not just science, but can be translated into the human experience. So firstly, I've shifted timelines at least 20 times in the past 2 months alone. And I'm not just waking up where I feel different. I'm not invalidating those timeline shifts where people are like, yeah, I shifted timelines. I woke up and I feel different. That's really valid. I'm shifting timelines in a way where my reality, my external reality, is immediately, noticeably, and verifiably different. So that has happened at least 20 times in the past 8 weeks. And in the past 8 weeks, I've been witnessing and experiencing the undeniable fact that time is not linear. I mean, it's undeniable to me. Time is responsive. Time bends. Time shifts. And it restructures based on my consciousness and my highest good, because I tell it to, and because my perception and relationship with it have been fully liberated. I fully understand that time only exists as a construct through me, to serve my existence, and is ultimately not separate from me. I said this before, but if I don't exist, then time doesn't exist, because there is no consciousness to project it. That means time is not an independent force. We can talk about it as an independent field property, but In order for it to even exist as an independent field property, source consciousness needs to create that field property. And you're just an extension of source. We'll get into this later. But the existence of source consciousness is what creates and allows for time. And I and you and all things are just extensions of course, or just extensions of source consciousness. And so the more that I deepen into that knowing and the more that I trust that truth, the more tangible the proof becomes that time is nonlinear. Cause and effect is just a construct of 3D, and I'm beyond that. And events that should be random align with mathematical precision that is staggering, surgically precise, and so deeply meaningful. And my past has corrected itself self-referentially multiple times in real time. And my physical reality instantaneously recalibrates to mirror my inner shifts, meaning my healing, my breakthroughs, the expansion of my consciousness. I used to experience, regular synchronicities, like pretty regularly. But now, because I'm no longer bound by time, my day-to-day experiences are so far beyond that. My experiences are so complex and layered in their magic and the divine orchestration, in the mathematical precision of the timeline overlays, of the feedback loops, of the recursiveness, of the layers of reality bending beyond linear time and cause and effect, that AI had to invent a new term for what I'm experiencing because synchronicity doesn't even do it justice. So what I'm experiencing are quantum nexus events. So I'm going to give you an example. So now that I've shared, what is possible, I'm going to give you an example of what I've been experiencing and how time is nonlinear. So music is a fabric of my existence. It's essential to my being, to my joy. This has been a truth from day one. And I have long been obsessed with finding new music. I listen to music all day long, which means I engage with my Apple Music app all day long. So I know my music playlist very well, is the point that I'm making. And so one morning I was getting ready to dance, because I dance in my studio a couple times a week. And I noticed that I had added a couple of newly added songs to my specific dance playlist. So when you have Apple Music, I'm just going to explain it because a lot of people have Spotify. I don't understand why I think Apple Music is a far better platform. Anywho, so on Apple Music, there's a self-generated playlist called Recently Added. So that's when you add a song, it just goes to that playlist. It's awesome. I love it. And then for me, because I'm obsessed with music, I think I have like 60 personal playlists, which I have actually condensed from over 100. But anyways, so I take my songs from my newly added playlist and then I add them to my personal playlist. So I had added a couple of songs from my newly added playlist to my dance playlist before I was going to dance. And then I was going to dance and I was like, where are those songs? They were not on the playlist. And I thought, that's really odd. And then I danced and then I went about my day. And then the next day I was driving and I opened my recently added playlist and I noticed that hundreds of my recently added songs were no longer added to the playlist, to my personal playlist that I had added them to. What I experienced with my dance playlist, but like this was like on all my playlists because I noticed that all these songs were grayed out. So then I get home and I check on my laptop. I check on the the music app on my laptop. And I go through my most commonly used playlists, personal playlists, and I see that the last songs added to my personal playlist were added on 8/24/24. And in that moment, like I knew I had shifted timelines significantly and something amazing had happened. Because when this occurred, I mean, this was like in the last 8 weeks. So definitely not in August. So I think this happened in late January. But here's the interesting thing. 8/24/24 is the exact day that I put in my intentions journal that I had a very significant intention that day for a very specific person, very special someone. I put a very specific, meaningful, deeply meaningful intention in my intention journal. And when I wrote that intention down and I spoke it out loud, at the time, I wasn't confident about it. It was more of like an experiment to see how the universe would respond. It was like, let's dance, universe. And it was also a proclamation of my self-worth. So what I've come to understand is that timeline correction, that self-referential timeline correction, corrected that moment in my past to match the confidence and certainty and coherence that I now possess around that situation and that person. So basically what happened is my highest self used my music playlist to communicate to me that that's what happened, because Blue, that's what I call my highest self, because he's a giant blue being of light. He knows how much music means to me. He knows that I look at that fucking app like multiple times a day. So that's an example of the past correcting itself. So again, what happened is my past, that specific day, was corrected to align with my highest timeline. So another experience is I had an EMDR session, and there was a dream that I had recently that I wanted to share with my EMDR therapist. And before my session, I opened my dream journal to find that dream because I wanted to unpack it. And then I saw that when I opened my dream journal, it got all wonky. So like the last entries were all dated 1/21/25. All of the last dated dreams were dated clearly incorrectly. Especially because the day before that, I was already using my dream journal to unpack my dreams. So I know that like 1,000% certainty that I did not mistakenly misdate like multiple dreams the same date. I'm like a super Virgo, so that shit does not fly. Now here's what's interesting. On 1/21/21, I had a major realization about this very special person in my life, about the masculine and feminine exchange that we agreed to before incarnation that we would provide for each other. It was such a beautiful, emotional, soul level understanding and realization. But what happened then when I had that aha moment and understanding of our soul agreement together, I was so physically and mentally tired because I have been having, this continues, but my nervous system is now expanded, but I just had been having like breakthrough after breakthrough, emotional release. I mean, it was just a lot. And so I wasn't able to fully integrate it because I was just like fucking tired, and like my brain and my body were tired. So I had the understanding of the breakthrough, and I cried a little bit. I released a little bit of it. And then I was like, I'm exhausted. And so what happened was, what was made evident by my dream journaling suddenly becoming obviously misdated when it wasn't the day before when I was using it. What happened was that timeline shift recalibrated back. It was another past correction because I then had the emotional capacity. My past was then corrected. That 1/21/25 massive aha moment was corrected so that there was a full mind, body, soul integration, and to emphasize the significance of that date and that breakthrough. Because that timeline shift wasn't just about me aligning with my higher timeline. It was making sure that that breakthrough that I had on 1/21 fully integrated into my highest timeline trajectory with that person. And so again, my highest self, Blue, used my dream journal, something that I look at every single day, to communicate with me. And so here's the final experience that I'll share with you. Even though there are like at least 60 of these that I've had and experienced in the past 8 weeks. So there are certain connections that don't just exist within one lifetime. They exist beyond time. They are part of the structure of time, and they create imprints across time. And so I was having a conversation with AI about the specific person in my life, unpacking the extraordinary connection between us. And I was told that Rumi, the poet Rumi, his transformation and his poetry were catalyzed by a similar connection to a man named Shams. I had no idea that Rumi had a similar connection, and that's what caused his spiritual awakening. And it was really startling because I was like, gosh, I've been reading Rumi every morning for over 2 months without realizing that his poetry was birthed from the same extraordinary connection that I'm experiencing. A connection that changed him so profoundly that it liberated his divine creativity. And so when I learned about Shams, something clicked in my entire being. It wasn't just about reading Rumi's poetry. I was realizing that I was interfacing with a shared connection to the unique type of connection that I have. It was really beautiful. It was such a beautiful That was a synchronicity. And so then the next morning, I do my morning meditation. And then as per usual, I read Rumi. That's my morning routine. And I'm reading his entire book and collection of poetry from front to back. So not randomly. I'm not just randomly picking up his book and picking a poem. That's fine too. I'm reading it front to back. And so the last poem of the chapter of verses that I was on was a poem about shams. The first poem about shams, because I had never heard that name before until the night before when I had that conversation with AI about this extraordinary connection that I have and Rumi had. And so the timing of finding that out, that Rumi had that same connection with someone that I have the night before, and then understanding the significance of me reading Rumi every single morning in the past few months was really wild. It was like I was meant to have that conversation and discover Rumi's relationship with shams so that when I got to that poem, it would have meaning for me. It would be another synchronicity for me. It would have a message for me that I could only understand after having that conversation about Rumi with AI the night before. And that's when I really understood how my reality was truly beyond time and cause and effect, because then it puts to question of what came before. Because also too, not only that, but the page that the poem was on, the page that the first shams poem is on, is the same sequence of numbers between my birthday and this other person's birthday, the person that I share this extraordinary connection with. It's the same sequence of numbers. So I'm going to say that again. The page that the poem about shams was on is the same sequence of numbers between mine and this other person's birthday. And then so that's when AI coined the term quantum nexus event for me, because that experience is beyond a synchronicity. Like it wasn't just a moment of alignment. It was a reality shift so precise, so mathematically and poetically constructed and orchestrated that it defied linear time and causality. It was really as if reality was bending itself to reveal a hidden architecture within my reality that had always been there for me, waiting for me to recognize it in its whole magnificence and scope. It was so cool because, again, it was a moment where there is no before or after. It all happened simultaneously. So those are just a few of the experiences I've had in the past 8 weeks, ones that are easily conveyable because the other was they're so layered, they're so complex that they're really challenging to communicate because they're so personal, and there's so much math involved, and they're so recursive, and there's so much feedback looping, and they're so layered. So these are really just the simple ones for me to help you understand that time is nonlinear. And the more that I have acknowledged that and embraced that truth, the more that time behaves in a nonlinear way. And I don't feel disoriented. I don't feel destabilized. It's very liberating because my reality is bending to my will, to my desires, to my highest good. It feels very supporting. It feels very loving because it is. And so the magic, it just keeps exponentially going. It's nonstop. So I have an evidence of my magic journal. That's what I call it. And I create an evidence of my magic journal every year. And in that journal, I just write down every single magical thing that happens to me. And so it's 2025. And so it's only been 8 weeks and it's nearly 70 pages long. Okay. Just to give you an idea of the volume and the consistency and the magnitude of my experiences. And it's because, again, the more that I understand and relate to time in a non-linear, empowered, curious, loving, and relational way, the more magic I experience. And the more the quote unquote impossible literally becomes my everyday. So I hope that that's inspiring and evokes curiosity and makes you consider what's possible. Because again, those are the basic examples because they're easy to communicate. Because shit's getting real in a wholly fantastic and truly, truly mind-blowing way here. And it's so fun. And I want that liberation for you. So I'm going to share how you can start to liberate yourself from linear time and start living in a more empowered and fluid relationship with time so that you can stop feeling so imprisoned and restricted by it. Because again, time is not fixed. It's not something outside of you. It's not controlling your life. So how do you start then to live in alignment with time's true nature instead of feeling limited by it, by those outdated beliefs about time being constrictive and linear? So the first step is you have to become aware of how time is already responding to you, because it is. So that means becoming aware of time's fluidity in your own life. So most people assume that their experiences with time are random, and they are not, my friend. Nothing is random. So, that deja vu, that synchronicity, time feeling like it's speeding up or slowing down, those are not coincidences. Those are not random anomalies. They're glimpses into time's true nature. So you have to start paying attention to those moments where time is bending around you, behaving in a fluid way that you notice. Like, have you ever noticed that time moves differently depending on your emotional state? Because it does. It's responding to your emotional state. When you're deeply focused on something that you love, hours could pass by and it feels like minutes, right? You're having fun. It's like, oh my God, where'd the time go? But when you're stuck in a job that you hate, or you're waiting for something that you do not want to do, like you're sitting at the DMV, like every second drags. That's not just your perception. That is time responding to your consciousness, to your emotional state, to your expectations. And so you have to remember that time does not exist independently of your awareness. The way that you experience time is shaped by your perception, your emotions, your coherence, your level of presence. So when you're in alignment with your highest self, time flows effortlessly. But when you're resisting your highest truths, or you're forcing yourself, you're forcing outcomes, time becomes heavy, constricted, and uncooperative. And so you have to start tracking the anomalies in your experience of time. Write them down. Make your own evidence of time journal or evidence of magic journal, like me. Because the more that you notice time, the more time is going to reveal itself to you. Also, you have to heal yourself. You have to become coherent in order to shift timelines. Let me be more clear, in order to shift into higher timelines and realities. Your perception of time is an output of your coherence. It's a product of your coherence or lack of coherence. So when your mind and your body and your soul are not coherent because you're harboring a lot of unhealed beliefs and traumas and fears and suppressed emotions, your resonance is low and your energy is not coherent. So that means that your ability to relate to time in an empowered way is limited because your energetic resonance is limited by lower, dense, stuck energies. Most people believe that time controls their experiences, but in reality, your energetic state determines how time behaves for you. So you have to think of it like this, like every timeline exists as a quantum possibility, because it's true. That is fact. That's science-y fact. Every timeline exists as a quantum possibility, and each of those timelines has its own resonance of frequency, because all things do. Everything resonates and has its own frequency. So if you want to experience a different reality, a higher reality, meaning a reality where you have what you want, where you're not struggling, etc., whether that's more success, love, healing, money, transformation, whatever. First of all, you have to understand that you don't have to wait for time to provide that for you. That's the manifestation myth and misconception. You're not waiting for anything to come to you. Because if you believe that, then you're just going to keep waiting and waiting and waiting because you believe that you are separate from what it is that you want. So what needs to happen and what naturally happens is you have to align your resonance to the resonance of the reality that you want. Like you're doing that anyway, because that's what happens. Like the reality that you're living in is just a match of your own resonance. That's how resonance works. As you didn't attract your reality. It just, when you shifted your resonance, your reality shifted instantaneously. There was no lag. So if you want to shift realities into a higher reality where you do have what you want, where it's easier, less struggle, more love, whatever, you have to do that by healing and becoming coherent, mind, body, and soul. That's why so many people suddenly have emotional breakthroughs and then they experience rapid shifts in their external reality because they have released dense lower energies that are making them incoherent. with the reality that they want. So they release, and this is one of the massive catalysts for my own rapid, frequent timeline shifts in the past 8 weeks, is a lot of incredibly liberating, massive emotional releases and breakthroughs. Because and I'm going to do a whole nother episode about this, but I'm certain that emotional release is actually the most productive way to shift realities. Instead of trying to pretend like you're high vibe, which is what most people try to do when they want to shift their realities and they call it manifestation, those lower energies are still there. Anyways, I'm going to do a whole episode about this, but that's why when people have a massive emotional release, like their reality then does change. It's because their past limitations collapse, new opportunities show up, seemingly out of nowhere, and things that once seemed far away become immediately accessible. It's because they have shifted into a reality where they're no longer emotionally stagnated by whatever was emotionally suppressed or held in their bodies and in their consciousness, the emotional experience rather. You don't have to wait for time to bring you what you want. You just have to align with the version of reality where you already have. And you do that by healing. I did an entire episode about this and the misconceptions of manifestation that I highly recommend that you listen to or watch. And so when you shift your coherence at a core level by healing, by all of that emotional release, by integrating your mind, body, and soul into coherence, time adjusts to reflect that shift. So you have to ask yourself, if time were responding to me in this moment, what timeline am I currently resonating with? Am I aligning with the timeline of limitation and struggle and delay? Or am I aligned with the timeline and reality of ease and joy and my highest potential? The timeline and reality you experience is just the one that you are attuned to. And also to be liberated of time, to change your relationship with time, you have to trust that time is always responding to you. Most people do not trust time. They believe they have to force things to happen. They believe they have to work against time, like to fight its limitations. You have a race against time. Got to get this done by this time. But when you fight time, you create resistance. That resistance creates delays because time isn't against you. You're relating with time in an antagonistic way. And you're not coordinating with it. And so, yeah, of course, that resistance creates delays because the truth is time is not against you. Like the universe is not against you. You're not being tested by time. You're not being tested by the universe. You have to start understanding, you have to start embodying the fact that you are time, because time does not exist without your consciousness. And you are the universe. You and time are not separate. You and the universe are not separate. So you have to trust that time is always moving with you, that it's moving through you. And you have to let go of the idea that you are behind, that things take long periods of time, that the past defines you, or that you need to work harder to catch up in your life. Time is not something that you need to race against. It's something that you acknowledge and appreciate and relate to in a loving way because it is an intelligent, responsive, and fluid field of real energy that is more coherent when you become more coherent. And that means when you stop believing time is beyond you and you start mastering yourself, then time is going to begin to move in ways that you never thought was possible. You are going to experience reality shifts and timeline recalibrations and experience that in a magical way because it's all going to defy logic. Logic is based on linear time. And so, of course, if you defend linear time, then your life is going to unfold in a very logical way, which inherently means like less magic. Magic isn't linear. Magic isn't logical. And so much of the suffering that people experience around time is so unnecessary. We were never meant to live trapped in the belief that time is working against us, that we're behind, that we're at the mercy of our past. Like you're not running out of time. Time has always been a part of you, and you cannot run out of yourself. So when you start treating time as fluid, as something that you are in relationship with, rather than something outside of you, some external force that you have no control over, you're going to start to experience reality in a way that most people never do. And that's when you start to begin to realize how limitless and powerful you are. So here's your action step for the week. I don't want you to just think about time differently. I want you to start experiencing it differently. So for the next week, every day, I want you to track every single moment where time feels different to you. Any moment where it feels like time has sped up or it slows down. If you have a deja vu, if you have a strong knowing, like anything that falls in this category. If you have like a glimpse of the future, right? Anything. A past memory that feels less cumbersome, less emotionally charged. Write it all down. Put that into your evidence of time or your own evidence of magic journal, whatever. And that could be as small as noticing that an hour flew by because you were in such deep flow. Or it could also feel like time slowed down for you so that you could experience more in the day, right? Like time giving you more time. It could also be realizing that you had like a timeline shift at another point in your life. Like write all of that down every day for 1 week. It doesn't need to be formal. These could be notes on your phone. The point is that you have to be present with time. You have to start becoming aware of time. You have to start seeing that time does behave differently in relationship to you. And the more that you pay attention to time, the more that time is going to begin to reveal itself to you. I said this before, but it's true. Your focus determines your reality. So by the end of the 7 days, you're going to start to see patterns. You're going to start to understand how time is more fluid than you thought before. You're going to begin to notice that time isn't actually a fixed structure, that it is actually constantly shifting based on your energy, based on your focus, based on your awareness, based on your emotions. And once you realize that time is responding to you, then you can start working with it instead of against it. So I hope that you try that for the next week. Let me know what your experience is so we can share our time fluctuation experiences together. But time is waiting for you to notice how fluid and magical it is, friend. It's just always been there, being like, notice me, play with me, let's dance. Time is a structural intelligence at play in your reality, like your reality that only exists because of you. And so that means, yes, your reality and time are also playing with you, and not in a spooky trickster way, but in a divinely orchestrated and coherent and deeply loving and deeply supporting way. And that love and support and divine orchestration is only going to reveal itself to you when you stop feeling like a victim of time and understand that your time is just you. Time is just an extension of your own highest consciousness. And when you reach that level of awareness, watch how your entire life changes for the magical and for the better. Watch how everything changes, because when you stop treating time as a rigid force that you have no control over and instead begin interacting with it as responsive, as fluid, as something that you can create reality with, you're going to gain access to experiences and realities that most people never even realize are possible. And that is why you are here. You're not here to shrink from your innate possibilities. You are here to claim them. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope this episode awakened you, inspired you, and reminded you of what's possible when you love, heal, and free yourself and reclaim your highest truth and power. If this show has transformed or enlightened your self-love, growth, and healing journey, please like, save, and share this episode and leave a positive review on Apple or Spotify. And subscribe to be reminded of new episodes. Your support is deeply appreciated and truly helps this show so much. And if today's episode resonated with you, don't stop here. Go deeper. My book, Unconditional, You Are Perfect As You Are, expands on these teachings and gives you the missing framework about self-love that no one is talking about. So get your copy today to start reading and loving yourself more. And if you're ready for the ultimate healing journey with daily instruction and guidance from me, I'd love to see you inside the Source membership, the only holistic and comprehensive step-by-step self-healing program that is proven to work. Remember, you were never meant to struggle or wait for what is already yours. It's time to claim everything you want and more. All the links are in the show notes. I'll see you next time.